Every couple of weeks, this happens where Hamas will say, we want a permanent cessation to hostilities, which is, of course, an understandable desire, a totally reasonable desire. And Israel says no. Okay? Israel says, nope, not going to happen. There's a couple different things I want to talk about. Number one, Israel accepts new U.S. proposal for ceasefire with Hamas, says Israeli official. And lo and behold, this is yet another instance where there is real Brandonization taking place. Before you celebrate, understand that this new Israeli proposal is not a real proposal. Once again, Hamas on Thursday said it was reviewing the new Witkoff proposal and was responsibly studying it in a way that serves the interests of our people, provides relief, and achieves a permanent ceasefire. The Israeli official told CNN the proposal calls for the release of 10 living hostages and 18 deceased hostages, as well as a 60-day truce. The official provided no details about the beginning of negotiations for a permanent end to the war, a key Hamas demand that Israel has refused to accept. According to the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the hostage families earlier in the day that he had accepted Witkoff's proposal. During her briefing on Thursday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Levy confirmed that Special Envoy Witkoff and the president submitted a ceasefire proposal to Hamas that Israel backed and supported, and that discussions are ongoing. We hope that the ceasefire in Gaza will take place so that we can return all hostages home, and that's been a priority for this administration from the beginning. Earlier on Thursday, Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich said accepting the proposal would be sheer madness, writing on social media that he will not allow such a thing to happen, period. But Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid urged Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to accept the proposal publicly and immediately, even if its far-right members abandoned it. A U.S. official told CNN earlier this week that Witkoff has not met directly with Hamas. According to a source familiar with the matter, Palestinian-American businessman Bashara Baba met with Hamas in Doha about the proposal. Baba, who led the group Arab Americans for Trump during the 2024 presidential campaign, has been working on behalf of the administration. There is a full text and also the Hamas statement, obviously. A senior Hamas official criticized the Witkoff term sheet, telling me it abandoned commitments the U.S. made to Hamas in direct talks. The proposed deal from the Israelis through Witkoff is extremely difficult to accept, he told me. There is no talk about the ceasefire deal from January 19th. There is no talk about a return to the situation before March 2nd, when Israel abandoned the original ceasefire. The Hamas official said there is no guarantee Israel would even respect the 60-day truce after its 10 captives are returned in the first week of the deal. They might launch the war again, he said. There are no guarantees to a permanent ceasefire, no guarantees for a permanent withdrawal. Full text. Framework is 60-day ceasefire. President Trump guarantees Israel's adherence to the ceasefire during the agreed-upon period. Release of the hostages, 10 Israeli live hostages and 18 deceased hostages from a list of 58 will be released on days 1 and 7. Half of the living and deceased hostages, 5 living, 9 deceased, will be released on day 1. The remaining half will be released on day 7. Not the last day, but day 7. Okay? Implying that they don't even want to do a 60-day ceasefire. They just want to do a 7-day ceasefire and then go back to the unlimited bombing campaign and unlimited starvation campaign as they were doing. Humanitarian assistance. Aid will be sent into Gaza immediately once Hamas agrees to the ceasefire agreement. Whatever agreement reached on aid to the civilian population will be respected through the course of the agreement. Aid will be distributed through agreed-upon channels that will include the UN and Red Crescent. Israeli military activities. All Israeli offensive military activities in Gaza will cease upon this agreement entering into force. During the ceasefire period, there will be a cessation of aerial movement, military, and surveillance on the Gaza Strip for 10 hours daily or 12 hours daily during the days when exchange of hostages and prisoners take place. IDF redeployment. On day 1, after the release of the Israeli hostages, redeployment in the northern part of the Gaza Strip and Netzarim corridor in accordance with Article 3 regarding the humanitarian aid and based on maps to be agreed upon. On day 7, after the release of the Israeli hostages, redeployment in southern part of the Gaza Strip in accordance with Article 3 regarding the humanitarian aid and based on maps agreed upon. The technical teams will work out the final redeployment boundaries during proximity negotiations. So they are literally saying, like, it's not, they're just going to continue. They're not going to stop. Benjamin Netanyahu has said time and time again that he is invested in the permanent displacement of all Palestinians living on the Gaza Strip, and they are still going through it. They're still going through with that. They just want to get the hostages out so that the anger and resentment from Israeli society that want the hostages out and then want the bombing to continue and permanent occupation of Gaza to continue, the permanent displacement of Gaza to happen, is something that they're going to be pushing for. It appears that the new temporary ceasefire proposal Israel and the U.S. are pushing would give Israel cover to resume this after 60 days. It also neither guarantees, not even 60, make no mistake, after 7 days. Even a temporary ceasefire that allows in aid would be better than nothing, but this isn't anywhere near a lasting solution at better breath and for captives to be exchanged before Israel continues on its quest to empty Gaza. At the end of the day, Israel isn't going to accept anything less than a permanent Israeli occupation and the expulsion of Palestinians from Gaza. The only thing that can stop that is international intervention. Every couple of weeks, this happens where Hamas will say, we want a permanent cessation to hostilities, which is, of course, an understandable desire, a totally reasonable desire. And Israel says, no. Okay? Israel says, nope, not going to happen. Hold on one second. As you know, as we have shown through the latest polls that have come out, that many Hasbara agents have actually tried to disparage, but done a very shitty job of doing so, like Benny Morris or Boner Box. Israeli society has a lot of appetite for permanent displacement of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. 82% of Israeli Jews, or 87% of Israeli Jews, want a permanent displacement of all Palestinians of the Gaza Strip. They want that. 47% of Israeli Jews actually are fine with Amalek-style completing of every single person, child, baby, man, woman, elderly, that currently lives in the Gaza Strip. Total extermination, okay? The only thing standing in the way of the only hurdle in the way of this like permanent ethnic displacement campaign is the hostages. The very fact that there are still alive Israeli hostages that are in the Gaza Strip, and their friends and their family members and other members of Israeli society are making a big fuss. They're making a big fuss about this. Okay, it's not about the genocide. It's not about the live streamed Holocaust. It's not about the victims of said live streamed Holocaust. It's simply about the Israeli society's resentment towards Netanyahu revolves around, one, immediately after October 7, not being able to secure and actually defend Israel when that veil of security was penetrated. And then shortly after that, the anger and resentment was because Benjamin Netanyahu was just like killing their family members and their friends at a rapid clip with Israeli bombing campaigns, sometimes directly shooting and killing them. 3 of the Israeli hostages that had escaped literally got shot by the Israeli military with small arms. Like they shot them point blank. So that's the situation at hand. They want to do, I think, 7 days, pull out as many people, pull out all the remaining hostages, and then continue bombing and continue the destruction and continue the knowing full well that the international community is not even getting together to recognize the statehood and sovereignty of Palestine. Okay? Because remember, European leaders are pushing in the direction of recognition for the Palestinian state. This is seen as a major danger for Israel because that comes with additional legal protections for all Palestinians. Okay? But that in and of itself is not moving the needle, especially considering that there is one European country that has recognized Palestine as a state, Ireland, and Ireland itself recently actually failed on a measure to stop doing trade, to stop to do boycotts and divestment from the state of Israel. So clearly there aren't enough there isn't enough material pressure that even states that recognize Palestine as a sovereign state will apply. Poland recognized Palestine too. Again, Poland is another great example. Polish leadership has gone back and forth and even has said that Benjamin Netanyahu can actually violate the International Criminal Court and visit Warsaw without, yes, Spain as well. Yes. Okay. It doesn't matter. My point is the public is resentful. The public is angry. Okay. broad majorities of regular citizens in all of these Western nations are very angry at Israel and angry at their own government for collaborating with Israel. This is true. So European leaders are trying to do their very best to manage the situation, to appease the public sentiment. Okay? They are trying to do their very best to be like, no, we're trying our best. We're trying our best. Part of that is this Occupied Territories Bill. What's in it, how it has changed, and what the implications might be. Even without some of the provisions contained in Senator Francis Black's original bill, it could face opposition. The government has decided to approve drafting of the Occupied Territories Bill, but is it not drafted already? Independent Senator Francis Black first tabled a bill to ban trade with Israeli entities based on the occupied Palestinian territories back in 2018, long before the current conflict in Gaza. The then government blocked it on the basis that as trade is an EU competence, the legislation would be illegal under EU law. Last year, however, in light of the conflict in Gaza and a decision from the International Court of Justice about the occupied territories, the government had a rethink, and the Attorney General advised the legislation could now be possible. Officials will proceed to draft the heads of the bill, a summary of what each section of the bill contains. The bill basically bans imports originating from the Palestinian territories that are, under international law, illegally occupied by Israel. It's like it's the bare minimum, basic like BDS provision. It's huge if it goes through, because it actually causes significant economic harm to Israel. Okay, and other nations could potentially follow suit. But the reason why I'm bringing this up, even though they hardly do any trade with the occupied territories in Ireland regardless, even then, this basic bare minimum push is a bridge too far, and it's already, even if it was implemented, it's one might say it's too little too late, a day late, $1 short. But it's crazy that even this day late, $1 short provision is still seen as impossible to push through. And this is for Ireland, a country that has already recognized Palestine as a sovereign state. So my point is, a lot of these European leaders are basically finally coming to the recognition that what Israel is doing is wrong. This is creating a permission structure for the media of said countries to actually cover the situation on the ground with the honesty that they should have applied since day one, that they chose not to until it was 19 months into this live-streamed Holocaust. And while the conversation is shifting against Israel, this will create even more pressure. It's an endless cycle of additional pressure. So there are some good things here. Okay? There are some good things here. I need you to understand. This is moving in the right direction. This is moving in the right direction. This kind of pressure is good. So I'm not going to cast this aside, but I will warn you that it's still, at this stage, purely for optics and offers no material penalties to Israel, no significant material penalties to Israel. Meanwhile, I will relitigate something that I have maintained since, everyone is now coming on the it is a genocide, actually, tip. Once there are now in mainstream media, in Washington Post. Wait, what? What the hell? Okay. A Washington Post journalist wrote an article about how it is a genocide and people should start saying it. Shadi Hamid wrote, "A new consensus emerging. Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. We should say so. Words have meaning, and they should be used when they describe reality." My essay in the Washington Post. This is a Washington Post op-ed. Never in my life did I think that we would actually see a Washington Post op-ed that openly says that Israel is doing a genocide. Okay? That's huge. That is a huge, huge difference. Yes, Shadi Hamid, not exactly a radical leftist, is calling it a genocide in the Bezos own Washington Post. If you haven't started using the term, which at this point is considered factual by mainstream human rights organizations and scholars, it's probably not for a great reason. A tide shift is happening. The people that are better at reading the room, like the Piers Morgans of the world, are taking advantage of the new permission structure that Western nations are giving. Okay, Western nations are giving to their media by saying you can criticize Israel now. That's precisely the reason why you're hearing from more and more people that previously were terrified of the political, social, economic repercussions that they would face. Okay. There is a new permission structure now. You can openly state that Israel is doing a fucking genocide, which is true. It's been true for 19 months. But now you can say it. So you'll hear a lot more people openly coming out and saying it. And when more people openly come out and say it, there will be more pressure. Okay? There will be more pressure upon our politicians to cut ties with Israel. Remember that. Ethnic cleansing has become the official policy of Israel. The nation's leaders are admitting it without apology. There was barely a pretense before, but now there's not even that. And these admissions combined with mass killings on the ground point to something even more horrific. Genocide. Ms. Rachel was the tipping point on our rally. No, it's not Ms. Rachel. It's every single person that has gone out and protested. Every single person has played a role in this. But more importantly, I think that, like, I'm angry. I'm resentful. I want to say, where the fuck were you for 19 months? Okay. But instead of saying, where the fuck were you for the past 19 months, we should look at the silver lining of this. Okay. Even if it's a PR initiative, remember, that should cause you to be skeptical of these people in the future. Okay. Never forget that. Never forget, for 19 months of genocide, 19 months of a live streamed child holocaust, these people not only actively ignored the reality on the ground, but even basically fucking did the role of offering contextualization to Israel. A much less significant analog here is the Jake Tappers of the world going from actively offering shelter to the Biden administration's senility that everyone could see in broad daylight, to then turn around and conduct investigative reporting once it was no longer problematic to do so, once there was no serious harm to your career. Okay? This is exactly what's going on here as well. But this does not mean that we should cast aside these people, not the Jake Tappers of the world, but I mean, like, the people that are now coming out and saying that it is a genocide. We should be skeptical of them. We should be critical of their intentions, but ultimately it's still a good thing because it opens up a new pressure valve. Yeah. Abby Wilkinson says, I have a mental catalog of public figures and people I know personally I'll never respect or like ever again, but I think we want to make the barriers to acknowledging and speaking against the ongoing genocide as low as possible. Welcome people through gritted teeth is exactly my point as well. It also does help increase the pressure on the government of the US, UK, Germany, and other Western states. And the only way this can be ended is if those governments are under so much pressure, they have to act. There's records of people's complicity and cowardice. That Zadie Smith article isn't disappearing. There's time to litigate this in the future. Yeah, it is gross. It is disgusting that it took almost 20,000 dead children for people in the Western media to finally say, I think there's too much death for me. Okay? But a barrier has been crossed. It is very clear. So when you see people that are also now taking advantage of this new permission structure, don't immediately fucking behave like a gatekeeper or a hipster, okay? I say this as someone who has suffered unimaginable career penalties for this, okay? It is no accident that I have not been invited to a single fucking award show or anything like that. And this is nothing. This is ultimately inconsequential, okay? Tremendous amount of revenue cast aside, losing a third of my audience initially after October 7. But none of that is meaningful, okay? That is all utterly meaningless as opposed to using the existing platform that I had to speak the truth every single day unconditionally, okay? This is why I don't make a big deal, a big show out of all of these things. It is utterly inconsequential, okay? It is utterly inconsequential. So if I'm not complaining about all these people that are coming in after, once they have more allowance to say the truth, you shouldn't make a big fuss about it either. Truth ? Law. I love that. There are still also hanger-ons that want to believe that the world's and the entire planet's opinion on Israel is not completely negative, and that's always funny. Like the Asmongold followers, the Ethan Klein followers that still are basically operating on this like completely lost boundary. Okay, Hasan, what of accountability and justice? So many of those who are going to mea culpa are some of the worst catalysts for this genocide. Oh, make no mistake. That's later. That comes later. Right now, the goal is to keep up the pressure. Okay? Don't fucking worry about that right now. Do not worry about that right now. Yeah. The Asmongold fans, the Tectone fans, the Ethan Klein fans, the Sex Pestiny fans, they're like the Japanese imperial fascist soldier holding on to his forward operating base in the fucking Philippines 39 years after the war ended, you know? They're just holding on. They're like, nope, you're a fucking terrorist. Shut up. You're a terrorist. Fuck you. Here. And while this is happening, I will seek to carve out another permission structure. Okay? As I've said time and time again, I will repeat it. There is no comparison between Israel and Hamas. One is a militant resistance comprised of orphan soldiers born into a 77-year occupation. The other is an ethno-religious supremacist apartheid state with nukes doing a genocide backed by the United States of America, the most powerful nation on the planet. Okay? There is no comparison. These guys are not in the same zip code. There is no both sides in this situation. Okay? While I have said in the past, and understandably that openly mentioned that, yes, there was a deliberate targeting of civilians on October 7, and therefore the October 7 campaign, regardless of the 75-year occupation, was an act of desperation that still can be considered terrorism. Okay? There were atrocities that took place on October 7. Relitigating October 7 19 months into this genocide is fucking insane. It is fucking idiotic. No one should ever entertain that. Okay? Absolutely not. And as I said, even on October 8, that October 7 only happened as a direct consequence of 75 years of military occupation and endless displacement that Israel has enacted without any scrutiny whatsoever, with full-blown support from Western nations upon the Palestinian civilian population. Okay? Another point that I also mentioned here is that Israel, as a belligerent occupier, does not have a right to defend itself by bombing Gaza. It obviously does not have a right to do genocide. No country has that right. No one has a right to do genocide. Israel is doing a genocide that is completely illegal under every metric. But Israel didn't even have a right to bomb Gaza in the way that it did in the aftermath of October 7, because Israel is a belligerent occupier of the Palestinian population. Okay? Palestinians, on the other hand, from the Al-Qassam brigades down to every last Palestinian that chooses to take up arms against the state of Israel, have a legal right to defend themselves against Israel's genocide. Okay? That's also another thing that you have to remind yourself of. But the reason why I brought this up is because the media tide is shifting in the direction of people recognizing the truth about Israel doing a genocide. But since that media tide is shifting, I need you to understand there is a reason why for 19 months no one has brought this up in mainstream media. Okay? No one has brought this up in mainstream media. One must ask the question, why no one has brought this up in mainstream media? Why is it that this is the only place, this is one of the few places in the Western world where you will ever hear this truth? It's not even a fucking falsehood. It's not an exaggeration. It's just simply international human rights. Okay? What would have been the proper response to October 7 in your opinion? I mean, I've already said it. Dissolve the apartheid instantly on October 8. That's what I said. I said that on Piers Morgan numerous times. Dissolve the apartheid, end the permanent military occupation, and fire off the negotiations process. All for all, allowing the Palestinians that are under permanent military detention to go free. You say numerous, a weird amount. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so Alonso Gramendi actually made a video about this. I'm going to watch it. I have it on the docket. Where is it? Hold on. I had it on the docket. Oh, Israel's analysis. Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza. I mean, it's not very visually appealing, but Alonso says the awfulness of October 7 violence should have led Israel to conclude that the status quo of living in a willful ignorance about their brutal settler colonial project next door had failed. Instead of genocide in Gaza, it should have built partnerships in Palestine to lift the occupation. The idea that the solution to a blockade of Gaza where every few years hundreds are killed in the mow the lawn operations would be the genocide of Gaza is stupid failed policy that only makes sense in a colonial mindset. War does not solve war. Israel had many partners and tools at its disposal on 8/10 to get rid of Netanyahu and its failed policies, announce a new status quo, and plot a credible roadmap to the decolonialization of Israel-Palestine. It instead chose to close the ranks around Netanyahu until the job is done. And the reason why they did that is because there is great appetite for permanent ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and permanent ethnic cleansing of all Palestinian citizens of Israel as well eventually. Okay? It's not there yet, but it will get there. Gaza first, West Bank second, and then you move the crosshairs to the Palestinian citizens of Israel within. Because it is an ethno-supremacist fascist principle. Okay? That is what Israel is built on. It's Nazi shit through and through. Remember, the reason why Hamas and other armed actors were able to penetrate so deep into Israel was because Netanyahu redirected security priorities to protect the West Bank settlers at the expense of Israel's kibbutz in the south. Netanyahu also supported Hamas for years out of a desire to keep Palestinian nationalism and unity broken and weak instead of helping to unify it so we could find partners for a decolonialization project that ends the occupation. Instead of holding him accountable for his failure and not keeping Israelis safe, he was rewarded with a get-out-of-jail-free card paid for by the blood of the Palestinian genocide. And then he also abandoned Israeli hostages. So what was Israel supposed to do on October 8th? Well, as Majed Bamia says, if the state of Palestine is expected to remain peaceful after a genocide that killed 55,000 Palestinians, then Israel should have been expected to remain peaceful after October 7th too. Yeah, exactly. It could have severely ostracized Hamas and built a large coalition for a new normal in Israel-Palestine. It could have agreed to the release of the hostages quickly, or if you believe Hamas would not, severely delegitimize them and put the pressure on the Palestinian Authority. But settler colonial projects choose to dig deeper into colonialism, and as all colonial projects, it led to genocide. Now comes the time for accountability and decolonization, not as a result of the West's solidarity after 7/10, but as a pariah state abandoned by its allies. It's that simple. So many people died in the process. And the idealist in me wants to fucking yell about how many newcomers there are that are finally openly saying the fucking truth. You have this. Benedict Cumberbatch, Dua Lipa, Rizwan Ahmed, Nicola Collin, and more than 300 other public figures have signed demanding Keir Starmer and UK's complicity and the UK's complicity in the horrors of Gaza. Yeah. Now, some of these people are active in the pro-Palestinian movement. Okay, many of them are. So I'm not going to say that they haven't done enough. Okay, but there are plenty of newcomers into the fray as well. Obviously, there are a lot of people still that have been actively protesting against their governments, actively protesting since the beginning, and maybe even, and far before October 7, as a matter of fact. Okay, but remember, these lists will keep coming out and public pressure will keep building, partially because there is a permission structure that comes with this. When you see more and more people, come out, more famous people come out, then there is power in numbers. People are no longer afraid that they will be cast aside, fired. Like Melissa Barrera, who was fired from the project Scream 6, right? I think it was Scream, right? She was fired from her project initially because in the early days of October in 2023, she had the audacity to post Israeli Holocaust scholar Ross Segal's work in the Jewish Currents magazine that said, this has the makings of a genocide. She was fired, and they said she was fired specifically because of her anti-Semitic statements, anti-Semitic posts on her Instagram. The post that they were referencing was her reposting a Jewish Currents magazine article from an Israeli Jewish Holocaust scholar, Ross Segal, saying what Israel was doing was a genocide. Think about how fucking insane that is. There were plenty of people who lost career opportunities in the process. There were plenty of people who fucking there were plenty of people who were punished instantly in an effort to silence those in an effort to silence the onlookers, in an effort to say there is no permission structure to say the truth right now. Fuck you. And yet people still fought. They still fought back. Regardless of what the consequences were, they still fought back. And here we are. So make no mistake. I'm not going to look at the situation in front of us. I'm not going to look at the situation in front of us and go, oh, look at these like newcomers. Look at these new allies. Fuck them. I'm not going to forget what they did. I was there. I saw it. Some of them directly were at odds with me. Piers Morgan comes to mind. Okay. But I will take advantage of the fact that there is a new permission structure and these careerists are now openly coming out to make their statements known. It's good. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Okay? I have direct contact to Dr. Feroz if need. Just a mom. I'm talking to him already, okay? I'm talking to him directly. I'm going to have him on the broadcast. Please. They are fair weather, not useless. Take advantage of the momentum. Exactly. And especially considering that Israel is still continuing its genocide, its live-streamed Holocaust on the Gaza Strip, it's important to have as many allies as possible to keep the pressure campaign. Yeah. Here is History Speaks, okay, historian Matthew Gabriel Cockerill calling out Boner Box here, okay? So this time, Hasan needs 3 pairs of hands to attack me and is still a pathetic flop. A poll released after this clip can show 82% of Israelis wanting to force Gazans out. Yet another can show 69% of them wanting to end the war in exchange for the hostages. Okay? We are not for killing them, but of course most Israelis are for expelling them. Why the fuck should we be ashamed of wanting people who produce endless terrorism next to Israel out and also quit a lot of cases of Arabs who has Israeli citizenship and committed terror attacks? How it started, Box Loner uses sophistry to discredit polling showing most Israeli Jews support deporting both their Arab fellow citizens overwhelmingly and Palestinians in Gaza. How it's going, Israeli fan of Loner Box insists, of course most Israelis are for expelling them. Interestingly enough, this guy has been constantly trying to undermine. Fuck you, fuck Hasan. Okay man. Hasan Trump'a götten basan. Ulan Türk değil misin sen? 9 kere Türk var amına koyayım. Hiçbiri de bir sik anlamıyordur he. Utan lan utan. Hold on. Another thing I wanted to show you. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up, the reason why I'm bringing up that poll is because, once again, Hasbara agent Boner Box lied to his audience, okay? The Hasbara streamer Box Loner is setting up a false dichotomy between, 1, poll results showing overwhelmingly Israeli Jewish support for ethnic cleansing and near half support for extermination, and 2, poll results showing support for an end to the war conditioned on hostage release. There is no such dichotomy. This is a false dichotomy that he's presenting. A pro-extermination or pro-ethnic cleansing Israeli could simply prioritize the lives of hostages / the IDF over his genocidal dreams and hence favor an end to the war, conditioned on a hostage exchange over continuation of the war. So as usual, this is just an attempt to obscure and whitewash by Loner Box. Okay? By the way, Israeli population shouldn't be dehumanized or written off as irredeemable, nor should the widespread genocidal attitudes in Israel and the clear normalization of calls to exterminate Palestinian civilians in Israeli politics and media be whitewashed through sophistry. Post-genocide, Israel should be de-radicalized through an ideological deconstruction of Zionism. Yes. So there are still naysayers who want to hang on. Okay? There are still naysayers who want to hang on. Careerists who think that they can hold on to being pro-Israel as a mechanism to farm clout to the best of their ability. So if you want to be resentful and angry, redirect your attention at those who are still refusing to read the room, as opposed to those who are now jumping off the ship, recognizing that the ship is fucking sinking. I recently saw Philion videos about you, and it's a shame he's going for the right-wing grift sass stuff. Whatever, who cares? I don't think Loner is pro-Israel. He's definitely against the current campaign. Beta Wolf, you've done this a lot, okay? I'm not willing to entertain your stupidity any further. Okay? I miss the MasterChef days. Anyway, I just don't get why it seems that the PA would work with Israel, but Hamas is a hard no. I want to hear a good response, not just genocide in air quotes. In life, unfortunately, both sides need to be considered to come to a deal, or we are just left with indefinite fighting. Please don't evoke Nazi comparisons or call me a Zionist. I want peace for these people already. You are one of the most annoying fucking chatters that is consistently doing this like mealy-mouthed bullshit, okay? Over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. Don't just say genocide. Of course, it's not an accident that you think Bonerbox, who literally fucking flew to Israel with Sex Pestany, who once famously fucking said that he wants Israel to finish the job and do a genocide of the Palestinians. Bonerbox, who literally went there and did a tour of Israel with Elon Levy, okay? With Elon Levy, did a tour of Israel with former propaganda minister Elon Levy. That guy is not pro-Israel, even though seemingly he finds himself defending falsehoods with regular frequency, including attacking me and claiming that I'm misrepresenting information that's coming out of reputable polls in Israel about the attitude that Israeli Jews have in Israel towards exterminating the entirety of the Gazan population. I think at this point, if a person is not invested in, here we go again, seriously though, what do you mean here we go again? What the fuck? How can you find yourself, you have to have so much motivated reasoning to believe that a person like this, at this stage, 19 months in, is not unconditionally on the side that is being fucking destroyed, and instead still offers credence to the side that is doing the death and destruction. You don't have this kind of fucking attitude towards the Nazis, right? I can't tell if this is you holding on to a crumb of faith that Israel is not a Nazi country because you don't want it to be true because of your previous social conditioning, or if you're that much of a fucking libtard that you are so permanently wired in a way where you're like, well, you know, it's a state ally, you know, it's not an adversary, so they can't do any wrong, right? And if they're doing wrong, it must be a mistake. And those who are defending Israel are also probably defending them because they feel the same way that I do. This is the same 44-month sub from the other day. Yes, a faith. Okay. Yeah, okay. Your faith is fucking idiotic. It's so idiotic that it actually comes across as you being, you know, it comes across as you running cover for the Nazi state of Israel doing a live-streamed Holocaust of mostly children. Sorry, that's just the truth. And the reality is, if you even for a little bit believed that the Palestinians were human beings, you would be utterly embarrassed to come in here with this kind of statement, but you don't, okay? A part of your brain, I think, still thinks, well, they are barbaric, you know? You have to kill that part of your brain that says, oh, they're a little parasitic, they're a little barbaric, because the moment that you recognize that every single Palestinian that has been slaughtered by the Israeli state is a real fucking human being, and not just like a part of a collective hive mind that is simply trying to fuck over Israel because they hate Jews, is the moment that you recognize the depravity of Israel's actions. And unfortunately, that is the primary motivator for a lot of people, the inability for them to see the true horror that Israel has conducted. That is precisely the reason why so many people can like take this weird ass position where they're like, well, you know, Israel is doing a genocide, but also no one should really resist against that. Israel's doing a genocide, but like, how can we trust these Palestinians? I mean, they did October 7th. Israel's doing a genocide, but you know, the Palestinians are also a backwards people. You just simply don't believe that they're human beings that are worthy of dignity, worthy of sovereignty. Even if you say that you believe it, you clearly don't. Because if you did, how can you fucking present this position? It makes no sense. And you will find yourself, nah, dude, it's not a racist thing. I do think they are. I never said anything about that. The reason why I say I don't think you think that they're human beings is because if you are giving any credence at this point to Israel, that means that you are stating that Israeli human beings, Israeli civilians died, and it's understandable that they still have some level of resentment against the Palestinians. They're humans. Their victims are real victims. October 7 justifies at least some of this violence that Israel has unfolded on the Palestinian population. But you obviously don't think that the Palestinians are worthy of the same fucking critical lens. They're not, you don't see them as human beings because they've done a million October 7s. What the fuck are we talking about? That's it. It's that simple. They've done October 7s in the past. Israel has done October 7s to the Palestinian population in the past. Okay? So if Israel's actions are even remotely justifiable upon the Palestinian population due to October 7, what is justifiable for the Palestinians to do to Israel now? After all is said and done, what do you think is justifiable for the Palestinians to do to Israel because of the thousands of fucking October 7s? Do you think that a reverse genocide is justifiable? Yeah. Even Bonerbox and those fucking dipshits will recalculate. I saw a clip of Sex Pestiny even being like, I don't really talk about Israel-Palestine as much anymore because they know the writing on the wall. And also, all of the things that they said, Trump is around and act like they're against Trump. They have to position themselves against Trump. So now they're just, you know, shamelessly moving on as though they did not do unlimited amounts of propaganda for Israel by directly going to Israel. Okay? There is no comparison. It's like flying to fucking Nazi Germany and going on a Red Cross mission to that one fucking concentration camp to say it's not a real concentration camp. They have showers. Like, it is literally the equivalent. But many people still don't want to fucking cross that boundary. Many people don't want to recognize that it is identical, okay? It is identical. The numbers are not the same, but it doesn't matter. It's identical in its intention. It's identical in its inception. That's what they did. And those very same people would fucking lose their minds if I even fucking traveled to Qatar for fun. You know what I mean? They would be like, what the fuck? Oh my God, it's so obvious. He's so HamasAbi. Lonerbox justified the recent Israeli occupation of Syria doesn't oppose military aid to Israel. Also said the U.S. was a moderating force during the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. I didn't get this from clips or Bad Empanada, but by directly watching him. Yeah. How many times do you have to watch someone who like claims that they're fucking anti-genocide, or which I don't even think he calls it a fucking genocide. He says it's not a genocide for the record, and actively positions himself against those who say it is a genocide, which is the truth. Okay. Israel's fucked up. They need to stop. I just don't see a way of fighting for the Palestinians logically. I'm against Israel for what they're currently doing.